Welcome back to the Business Spotlight. I'm Pat Dewar. We have Dave Swift here. He is a marketing guru, and we're talking about ways to help you with your business. Now, if you're a business owner, that makes sense. If you're an employee, actually all of us, in my opinion, have our own independent business. We essentially lease our services, our time, our attention to the employer. And you should always be looking at, how do I improve my position in the company? Well, actually, marketing can help. These laws that we're talking about are unwavering. They're ironclad. They're the kind of things that if you violate them, you'll probably go broke somehow, lose your business. So with that, this time we're going to talk about, can we do like a high-level overview of just the names of the six new ones?
What we're going to talk about is, Patrick, the law of the ladder, the law of duality, the law of the opposite, the law of division, the law of perspective, and the law of line extension. So those are the six we're going to cover today. And in this segment, we'll just try to cover the first two of those, starting with the law of the ladder. The strategy that you use to improve your business or to improve yourself in another business that you're working at is to depend what rung you occupy on the ladder. So if you are a company, and we talked about earlier, it's great to be first. Very often you're not first in the category, you're second, fifth, 10th, whatever. What you need to do is determine who is the category leader, who's at the top rung of the ladder in the category. Prospects use ladders, and by that I mean potential clients, to decide which claims to accept or reject.
Right.
So if they know something's number one, they're going to have more trust in that. And if you make a claim that's counter to that, that tries to prove you're better, well, tends to be rejected because they know that somebody's number one and they must be better, because perception, as we talked about, the law of perception.
So what I just heard is that it actually almost bounces off of them.
It really does. And Avis was one of the first to come along and say, okay, we're going to take a little different approach here. We're going to acknowledge that we're number two. We're not going to try to say we're as good as the best. We're not number one, but we try harder. Because their research had shown that one of the problems with being the biggest and the best is your employees tend to act like they're the best and become more bureaucratic and don't seem to try as hard. And the same thing you see in a monopoly or utility, this sort of thing. So they had a way to say, okay, we acknowledge we're not the best, we're not number one, we're number two, but we try harder. And with that, they just boomed their business. They didn't take any share from number one. They took it from 3, 4, and 5.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And that's the key. It's going to be hard to take it from number one, but you can take it from all those others below you in the rung. And that's what they did. Interestingly, their revenue soared when they acknowledged this. They were then purchased by ITT, and they advertised instead that Avis is going to be number one. And their revenues plummeted because the consumer said, no, you're not. The business person said, no, you're not. I can't believe that. And as a result, they lost share, not to number one, but to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down the line. So in terms of a ladder, high interest categories tend to have more rungs in a ladder than low interest categories. So soft drinks, you've got a lot of rungs in a ladder, for example. And oftentimes in a big category that's high purchase, like soft drinks, it's better to be on a lower rung of a large ladder than be on a top rung of a smaller category. So this is kind of the antithesis of, if you can't be the leader in the category, create a new category. In the case of 7-Up, for example, they called themselves the Uncola.
Right.
To some degree, they were creating a new category, positioning-wise, but they were solidifying themselves as a cola. They were not trying to get away from cola, because that was the big gorilla. They just wanted to differentiate themselves, and that's what they did. So that's kind of the way it goes. Now, the next law we want to talk about in this segment is the law of the opposite. or I should say the law of duality, I'm sorry, we'll get to the law of the opposite next. When although a ladder can start with a lot of rungs, market share tends to concentrate in 2 rungs, the top 2, obviously. And whether that's soft drinks, think of soft drinks, think of US automakers, think of rental cars, think of hamburger chains, think of mouthwash, think of toothpaste. Just go through it, and as you think of all these larger categories, a vast majority of the market share is sitting there in just the top 2 products.
I know in the early days with the PC, IBM,
And
then Apple.
Then Apple, exactly. Yeah. And now eventually you had the PC category develop and split into different types. And today we have tablets like we've got here, and we've got laptops, and we've got desktops, and so on and so forth. Gaming computers, we've done that segmentation that we talked about in some of the first laws. But that's really on, because consumers early on will try numerous brands. But it is, eventually they're going to settle on number 1 or number 2.
Outstanding. Well, folks, this is the Business Spotlight, and if you're a business owner, if you're a professional, you should be listening, taking notes, and seeing how can I apply these principles into my business, into my life, because these laws, if you don't violate them, they'll help you. We'll be right back.
Staying involved in dentistry on every level, local, state, and national, makes me a better dentist. Our patients are our life and our livelihood, and we appreciate every single patient that walks in that door. And these are our family, and we treat them that way.